Senator Shaheen zeroed in on a critical point: the dismantling of the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force. This was a specialized team that existed for one reason: to counter organized, state-backed disinformation efforts from countries like Russia, China, and Iran.
Director Patel, the recently released 2025 Worldwide Threat Assessment identifies Chinese, Russian, and Iranian malign influence activities as continued problems that jeopardize U.S. democracy at home and leadership abroad. So I was concerned when I heard about the decision to dismantle our efforts to combat disinformation and misinformation, including the FBI-run Foreign Influence Task Force. So with the dismantling of this task force, how does the FBI intend to continue to combat malign influence campaigns, which is the threat identified by the intelligence community?
Thank you, Senator. To put it most simply, that mission set is something that multiple divisions in the FBI do 24/7, nonstop. That's been my experience since I got there. They've been, because of the malign influence campaigns and because of the prioritization and the intelligence apparatus to collect against them, we have been covering down on that as a priority one, nonstop. And so I see it every day in my briefings, I see it every day in the field, and I see it in the cases and indictments we bring. So I don't know that I can't speak to it before, but I haven't seen it slowed down since I was here.
Well, you gave an impressive list of some of the accomplishments of the FBI since you took over. There was nothing about disinformation and misinformation on that list that I heard. Is there anything that you have seen in the time that you have been at the FBI that would suggest that you're continuing to make inroads to address that issue?
In terms of faulty intelligence collection, ma'am?
No, I'm in terms of disinformation and misinformation campaigns by our adversaries that are being used to disrupt activities in the United States, to sow divisions, to undermine our national security, to undermine the security of American citizens.
Understood. I see that on a daily basis, the FBI adjudicating those matters based on the intelligence we receive and attacking the problem sets, not just here in the homeland, but abroad where they originate. And we are also using our cyber capabilities and our intel capabilities to thwart those adversaries' abilities to penetrate infrastructure, including social media, to put those campaigns on.
It would be helpful to get a briefing at some point about what you're seeing with respect to the ability to disrupt those campaigns that are going on in the United States. Along those lines, Congress passed the Foreign Agents Registration Act to help Americans better understand the sources of information and disinformation that we're getting from our adversaries abroad. Again, I saw that the Department of Justice will no longer investigate possible FARA violations outside of traditional espionage activities. So can you explain to me how you distinguish traditional espionage activities from FARA violations in those investigations? And again, in light of the 2025 threat assessment that still identifies those Russian, Chinese, and Iranian malign influence activities as a threat, doesn't this give a green light to those nations to increase their use of agents in the United States?
I can't speak to the disposition of the Department of Justice and FARA. I'll leave that to them. But what I can tell you when it comes to who opens cases and how, whether it's adversarial, foreign adversaries or anything on the homeland, the line agents in the field have their dialogue, and they simply open cases and investigations whether or not there is a legal and factual basis to do so. And based on that, the amount of cases and investigations we are currently running to thwart adversarial operations inside America and those that attack American facilities outside of America, I see on a daily basis. I have not seen a downtick in that whatsoever.
Well, again, I would appreciate a briefing at some point, and maybe the committee could request that. Let me just ask quickly a final question, because you mentioned the scourge of fentanyl in your opening statement, which we've seen too often in New Hampshire and across this country. And I wonder if you could speak to the activities to address what's happening with social media platforms, which is where so many people are getting fentanyl, and they're coming. People buy them thinking they're buying some other prescription drug, and what they get is fentanyl. So can you talk about what you're doing to address that?
Absolutely. I could talk about that for hours, but I'll try to do it in a minute. Just to put it in perspective, in these last 3 months, versus the first 3 months of last year. The FBI seized last year 620 kilograms of fentanyl. In these 3 months of this year, we have seized 840 kilograms of fentanyl. That's enough to kill hundreds of millions of people. And specifically, we've taken to the streets in every single state, including New Hampshire, where we received 2,100 grams of fentanyl in these last few months. And what you highlight is one of the critical things that I'm focused on in how the distribution of fentanyl occurs to our children. And so what we are doing is using our online capabilities and our online platforms to offensively go after those that are fashioning fentanyl in a form that's appealing to our children. But the most important thing that I'm focused on when it comes to fentanyl, in that I launched when I first got there, is not just the narco traffickers that distribute the fentanyl here in North America, but no one's gone after the precursor companies and the production in mainland China. I launched that operation the first week I got there, and I'm working with our interagency partners on banking to shut down the precursors in our allied nations across the world that receive those precursors. If we shut that down, there's no version of fentanyl coming to America. So we're doing it from both ends.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
These campaigns aren't just some abstract concern. They're carefully designed strategies to weaken America from within, to deepen our divisions, to pit us against one another, and ultimately to undermine confidence in democracy itself. So when Shaheen asks why such a task force was dismantled, she's really asking whether our government is letting its guard down in a digital battlefield where our adversaries are relentless. Director Patel responded by insisting that the FBI hasn't slowed down its efforts, that multiple divisions continue to work on malign influence operations daily. That may be true, but Shaheen made an important observation. When Patel listed FBI successes under his leadership, none of them mentioned disinformation or misinformation. That silence matters, because if we're not naming the problem, we risk not prioritizing it. To really understand what's at stake, let's step back. Disinformation is not just fake news floating around online. It's a weapon. Russia, for example, has a long history of using propaganda to destabilize societies. During the 2016 election, troll farms and bot networks spread divisive messages to inflame racial tensions, undermine trust in institutions, and depress voter turnout. China and Iran have learned from these tactics, adopting similar strategies to push their geopolitical narratives into our information ecosystem. Senator Shaheen also raised another angle, the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, which is supposed to help Americans know when they're consuming information from foreign agents. If the DOJ steps back from investigating violations outside traditional espionage, that's essentially signaling to foreign actors that they have more room to operate on U.S. soil, another potential weak spot in our defenses. The hearing then shifted toward another crisis closely tied to the information environment, fentanyl. Director Patel emphasized the sheer scale of the threat, hundreds of kilograms seized, enough to kill millions. But what's most striking is the role of social media platforms in distribution. Cartels and traffickers are using the same online spaces where disinformation spreads, targeting young people, marketing deadly drugs disguised as prescription medication. This convergence of digital threats shows us that the fight against disinformation, misinformation, and criminal activity online is part of the same struggle. It's about keeping Americans safe in an era where the battlefield isn't just physical, it's digital, it's psychological, it's right on our phones. This is why Shaheen's pressing questions matter so much. It's not about scoring political points. It's about forcing accountability, demanding clarity, and making sure the American people know that the threats we face aren't being brushed aside. If foreign adversaries see that our systems are disjointed, that task forces can be dismantled without consequence, that agencies are vague about their progress, they will exploit those cracks without hesitation. The takeaway here is simple but urgent. Disinformation and misinformation are not secondary issues. They are central to national security. They shape how Americans view one another, how we vote, how we respond to crises, and how resilient our democracy can be under pressure. And when that reality is coupled with the ongoing drug epidemic fueled through digital spaces, it paints a clear picture. If we don't strengthen our defenses, the costs will not just be political, but human. So as you reflect on this hearing, ask yourself, are we prepared for the wars of the 21st century, where the weapons aren't just bombs and missiles, but bots, memes, fake accounts, and poisoned narratives? And if not, what kind of leadership and reforms will it take to get us there? If you believe Americans deserve the truth, transparency, and protection from foreign influence, stay engaged. Stay skeptical of what you see online, support leaders who take disinformation seriously, and don't underestimate the power of civic awareness. Because in the end, democracy's greatest defense is an informed public that refuses to be manipulated.